Subscribe to WROK on YouTube and never miss a meeting.
All right, good evening, everyone. Everyone doing all right this evening? All right, tough crowd. No dad jokes. Just kidding. There'll be lots of them. All right, well, I'm going to call to order the Royal Oak City Commission meeting for Monday, October 24th to order. We're going to begin with an invocation given by Commissioner Perush, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you stand if you can, please.
In just a little over 2 weeks, Michigan and the rest of the country will hold elections that will in many ways determine the path that our country and our state will take for the next 2 years and beyond. There's a great deal at stake in this election for voting rights, for personal autonomy, for equal representation, for the quality of leaders who will be elected to lead us for the next 2 years, and in many ways for democracy itself, as voters choose among the various issues and candidates. Thomas Jefferson once said, "We do not have government by the majority. We have a government by the majority who participate." Unfortunately, we have witnessed over the past few years well-organized and concerted efforts to disrupt our election process and to throw into doubt the election results and to thwart the ability of citizens to participate. Our elections are under threat not by hurricanes or power outages or wildfires or warfare, but by some of our own people. These efforts are still ongoing as we approach the elections on November 8th. What is most disturbing to those of us who work closely with our clerk's offices to make sure that they have the resources and training and ability to conduct fair elections for our residents is the harassment and sometimes threatening behavior that they're subject to from people who, for the most part, have no idea how elections are run. All of our local election officials take oaths of office to uphold the state constitution and the laws of the state, yet they are accused of not doing their jobs by people who don't have to answer to anyone but to each other. As November 8th approaches, let us all strive to appreciate the often extraordinary efforts our local elected officials are doing to ensure free and fair elections. Let us trust that they are doing all that they can to uphold the oaths of office that they all took to uphold the Constitution and the laws of our state. And let us accept the results of the elections conducted by these public servants as the legitimate voice of the people that it in fact is. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that brings us to item 4 tonight. There's an agenda in front of us published, which is the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Macy? Commissioner Macy moves approval. Commissioner Colo seconds. Discussion on the motion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we have an agenda. So first up on our agenda after approval is a update from Oakland County Board Chairperson David Woodward. He's here to give us some updates on the county.
It's not a big deal. There's going to be 2 people.
Do it from here, is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you, Chairman Woodward.
All right.
Pleasure to see you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the commission, this is, one of many presentations that I've been doing around the county as well as the county executive and other members of the board, specifically around a question that voters will be asked to weigh in on the November 8th ballot, and that's the Oakland County public transportation millage that's on the ballot. And so this presentation is to provide information about what the proposal is, what it would do, what it would be used for, and then certainly happy to answer any questions. But this is, this similar presentation has been given in Novi and Troy. It's actually, I think, concurrently being given in Troy right now, Birmingham, a number of other communities around the entire state, the county. I think it's important because people ask, what were the goals that were put into this, the countywide proposal that's on the ballot? And it ultimately comes down to the importance of public transportation and why public transportation is something that particularly our community and most of Oakland County has historically supported. It's ensuring access for everyone connection to the places that people need and want to go, and maintaining independence and specifically the freedom to get to where you need to go without necessarily relying on the car, whether or not you have the ability to drive or access to a vehicle. The ingredients and components that go into figuring that out, often we refer to it as the 3 Ds. It's destinations, density, and demographics. Destinations, where are the health centers where people need and want to go? Where are the job centers where people need and want to go? Education, entertainment, you name it. There are many destinations unreachable. I'll give actually some stats in a minute. Density. One size doesn't fit all. There's different types of transit to get people where they need and want to go. That makes sense, that can be afforded based on the dollars and revenues that are available, and taking that in consideration, where there is access and where there isn't access. And of course, demographics. Census is a great place to go to identify where there are zero-car households, where there's a concentration of senior citizens that need to go, assisted living facilities, you name it, where is there growth opportunity, where is there education opportunities, where are the trends and patterns of where people want to go. And so all of these things come together to help shape what the Oakland County Public Transportation millage is on this ballot. I think this is important. This is some information gathered by SEMCOG that profiles areas without transit that's open to the general public today. As you can see, nearly 600,000 residents in our county and areas around our county do not have access. That's different from where we are. We are in the transit provider SMART is providing transit in this area, but certainly outside there to a lesser degree. There are some, I'm going to talk about those individual transit agencies in a second, where there is some senior transit services available, but outside those areas, 63,000 residents over the age of 65, households under the income level of $50,000 annually, and 314,000 jobs unreachable by transit. We know of employers that are struggling to get workers, and transportation being one of the large contributing factors that is hindering that, as well as 30 major destinations. There are hospital clustered centers in the county that are not reachable by transit, and that's impairing the ability, if you ask hospital leaders around our county, it's a major impediment to delivering care. The convention center in Novi, unreachable by transit. Oakland University in many ways. Auburn Hills is part of it, but most of the university is in Rochester Hills, unreachable by regularly scheduled transit to get people where they need to go. And so this map basically illustrates the 4 transit agencies that provide the bulk of the transit services in the area. I think most of us are all very familiar with SMART, that pink area, and mostly in the southeast corner, minus the gray, and you'll see Walled Lake to by itself, disconnected contiguously to the SMART service area. This is the area that voters in this area have shown their support, north of 70% consistently, renewal after renewal, to provide the fixed route, paratransit, and other services that SMART is able to provide. But you also have 3 other transit agencies that are doing a really incredible job trying to meet the transit needs of their respective community. In the blue, you have the Older Persons Commission that provides door-to-door service for seniors, people with disabilities, to get to medical appointments, the grocery store, to the places that residents in that geographical area need and want to go. To the north, you have NODA, which is probably one of the older, smaller transit authorities, called the North Oakland Transportation Authority, providing those similar services. OPC serving Rochester Hills, and Oakland Township, NODA serving Orion Township, Oxford, and Addison Township. And then we often refer to as the younger sibling of all of them, the Western Oakland Transportation Authority to the west. That's Waterford, White Lake, and Highland Township. That is providing those those areas. There is a growing need to improve access to jobs, employees, not only in those areas for people that don't fall into that senior or people with disabilities transit needs, as well in these gray areas. On a very local community, you have limited access to service, but if you ask even these major agencies, they are at capacity. They often can't, I mean, with more resources, more vehicles, they all actually would say that they could serve more people, not only expand into the gray areas that are there to provide more robust service, but a variety of different services. And this proposal actually starts at the base, takes in stock of what we have in place and maintains, and then has a conversation about how we will effectively expand into areas so there's transit access for everyone. The proposal is pretty simple. It's a 0.95 mil for the next 10 years. Like I said, it maintains the funding that Oakland County currently provides support to SMART. It provides a base level of funding to OPC, the NOTA, the WOTA system. It sets aside money for expansion. And what does that expansion look like? And I'll talk about it in a minute. Creating new and extending existing routes, additional senior community-based transit, and provide the support and funding for microtransit, which is actually been piloted by SMART in the SMART service area in 3 zones, and is experiencing the fastest increase of usership. This is your app-based, more on-demand service. Funds would be collected in Oakland County. These funds would stay in Oakland County to ensure it meets the needs of transportation needs of Oakland County residents. It will be audited on an annual basis. All the dollars and how they're being used will be up on a website. And in effect, the county will contract with all the service providers of transit to provide this. It doesn't mean those 4 are the only ones that are limited to it. I hear and I've gotten some feedback, and we've been in conversation with other transit providers in the northwest area. Healthcare is closer on the other side of the Oakland-Genesee County border. There's nothing that precludes that. We just need to figure out how to deliver those service within the confines. At 0.95 mils, that is a lower rate that we are currently in Royal Oak and in the SMART area currently paying for it. It was renewed at 1 mil 4 years ago. Roughly, this is 5% less than that. It also mirrors the same rate that is being proposed for renewal in Macomb County. The key thing here, I think it's really important to recognize that this replaces the SMART millage, often referred as the opt-in communities. It replaces the SMART millage with this millage at a lower rate. It's built on those local solutions that those other smaller transit agencies all working together. And what I can since this proposal was crafted with the input of a lot of these local providers as well as others who understand and realize the importance of public transportation, have all been coordinating and look forward to, if approved by voters, being able to create a seamless system that it doesn't matter who's the person who's actually driving the vehicle to get you from point A to point B, that they would be seamless. So from a rider experience, it is point A to point B regardless of who the provider is. Like I want to state again, the 0.95 proposal is a baseline millage to establish a baseline level of transit. In comparison, like I said earlier, this is lower than the current SMART millage that's paid by that voters have approved here in Royal Oak in the SMART area. It's also, it's important to realize in comparison, it's lower than that of Jackson, Genesee County, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Lansing. I think it's important. The relativity of this rate is a reasonable rate that breaks down to an average of $9 a month per household across the county. And like I said, for residents in Royal Oak, that translates into a slight reduction of what currently is being paid today. The breakdown is about 58% of the total revenues goes to maintain current service. What is that? When I say current service, I just want to underscore that's the current level of funding to support what SMART is providing today. It creates a baseline funding for the WOTA, OPC, and NOTA services. Some of those actually also have a local millage component. This money would could be used to replace all of those revenues if the local community saw fit to be able to do so. And that base level funding is slightly above of what they are currently providing that service today. About 30%, it breaks out to be about $20 million on an annual basis for the expansion. That is to help to fill in those gaps, increase transit to more destinations across the county to address all of those 30 plus, nearly 40 destinations that are currently not reached today. And well as the capital, the infrastructure element, about $7 million annually to support new vehicles, technology, making sure that the rider experience is ADA compliant and so forth. It is important to realize that one site doesn't fit all. More dense areas, Oakland County is very fortunate to be made up of dense communities, rural communities, and everything else that possibly could fall between there. And the transit needs will be delivered in the most effective way to be able to use these dollars on an annual basis to meet that need. There are really three types of transit services. Community-based senior service. I know that the city of Royal Oak provides some of that service, paratransit, similar service on all, within a distance of current routes for people with disabilities, those unable to get to a fixed route. Generally operated by municipalities, lots of flexibility. Provides that extra level of customer service. In some cases, in some of the north end, it's literally door-to-door service, and this is what we're talking about. Largely supporting, especially in those areas that don't have the density to support fixed routes. Microtransit is the term that's being bantered around a lot, and often interchanged with that community-based. Reservations-based transit service. Microtransit is more of your app-based service for those who do use Uber or Lyft. This is a more on-demand. SMART has been piloting microtransit in Oakland County. It started it actually during in the midst of the pandemic in the Farmington Hills area, the Troy, Clawson, the very north end of Royal Oak near the hospital to get people back, to move people in that area to the hospitals in Troy and Royal Oak, as well as the Pontiac, Auburn Hills area. And again, they're seeing record utilization in large part because of the convenience. There is also limitations. It's not the most effective way to get people longer distances, but an incredibly useful way to get many people to places where they need and want to go. And this proposal helps fund expansion of microtransit across the county. And fixed route is probably, when we think of public transit, this is what people are most familiar with. Transit to hospital, medical centers, convention centers, malls, shopping centers, job clusters, and the sort. We have a number of fixed routes, and I'm going to show a map in just a minute of where those fixed routes are and where there are potential opportunities to expand those routes. That's part of a very robust community engagement process and figuring out what's the best way. Fixed route is one of the more expensive ways of delivering transit, and so that you're constantly having the conversation: is this the best way to move the largest number of people to where people need to get to, or are there other vehicles available to us? And this proposal provides the flexibility for that. And infrastructure, I think, is really important to recognize. The recently passed bipartisan infrastructure bill passed by Congress provides a record level of investment for public transportation since the New Deal. And what that means, that Michigan is on deck to receive upwards of $300 million annually for the next 5 years to support public transportation. What it requires is a community match to be able to do that. And that's why this proposal intentionally sets aside money, roughly 10% of it, to support sidewalk and pad improvements to make transit more user-friendly and ADA compliant, shelters and amenities, technology that can help support and can help support all these agencies working off the same platform to be able to best optimize and provide transit to their respective community, new vehicles, facilities, to help accelerate some of the challenges that exist today on maintenance of these vehicles going forward. This is the map that I mentioned about, and so on the screen, if you can see these small little orange lines, the orange lines mostly in the southeast area, these are the existing routes as they exist today. And you'll notice that there's some that just don't, it doesn't reach to where a lot of these job clusters are. These blue lines are potential additional expansion of these routes that can actually get to. I want to bring attention, and I mean, why in Royal Oak would I be talking about Oxford? Having conversations with leadership in the Oxford area, something that came to light in the wake of the terrible school shooting that happened last year, the time distance and lack of emergency room care within 30 minutes of that location to the north and to the south. And so there's ongoing conversations to address creation of a new hospital. You're not going to be able to sustain a hospital if you cannot provide transportation for people to get there. And every hospital system in this county will tell you that public transit is absolutely critical to getting workers to support their operation of their system. There's actually one thing missing. There's a little gap here, line here in the middle on Woodward Avenue, where you can see there's it just stops. It should be filled in with blue. It was in the earlier version. I don't know where the blue went. But the other thing, from further potential expansion, I think is necessary to highlight here. As you go to the further north and to the west, your community, the county gets a lot more rural, and so your community-based or reservation-based and microtransit is likely the best way to deliver that service. And the flexibility of the expanded service, in addition to the blue additional potential routes, is the opportunity to expand the NOTA, the WOTA, the OPC system. If you ask those transit agencies, are they able to take on additional load to service more areas, they will not be constrained to operating within just a very small area. It's that they can coordinate together and get people where they need to go and help support each other to be able to move people around, and they're very anxious to be able to support that. There are also some communities that are interested in becoming more a transit agency. There's the ability to do that. Now, at 0.95, the expansion dollars in total, roughly about $20 million. This proposal was made in conjunction with experts in transit to be able to figure out how to do that, and the ultimate deployment of all these things will be figuring out the most efficient way. Success and goals, coming back to those original components, is how do we ensure greater access that guarantees independence and then connects people to the destinations that they want to go. And then lastly, and I would open up to any questions for the mayor, for you, and members of the commission, people can go to the county website, oakgov.com/Oakland Transit. There's additional information that's there that talks about what this proposal does. But again, this is a base level of funding for a base level of transit that fills all the gaps that exist today, and ends this Swiss cheese approach and moves us from a conversation away from whether or not some people in our county will have access to transit, but to a conversation about how do we make better transit available to everyone. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chair Woodward. Questions? Chairman Woodward. Commissioner Perush.
Thank you for the information. We have an adult extended family member who's in his early 40s who has some developmental disabilities, but he's working as a job. But because he doesn't drive, he relies on smart transit. Mm-hmm. He is aware of this, and he is terrified that if this goes down, all of a sudden the smart transportation that he relies on to get to work every day is going to be gone. Can you comment on that? Because the existing smart millage is not being renewed, what happens if this doesn't fail, especially for communities that are opt-in communities like us? He's in Troy, which is an opt-in community as well.
Certainly. So the funding of public transit is very complicated, so I'm going to try to break it down. And of all the funding streams that come in, of state dollars and federal dollars that actually happen, as well as community matching dollars, in some cases some communities provide some of that funding. The smart millage, the 1 mill that was approved by voters, Troy, Royal Oak, and other things, that proposal was scheduled for to end at the end of this year. And so there are also limitations, because I'm going to assume that the destinations that he needs to, your family member needs to go is within the confines of the existing transit and not the other areas where there are destinations that people want to go.
He's ahead of the system.
Yeah, and so that's the rationale of the need, a recognized need of this. This area. I like to think more positive because I actually do believe that the voters of Oakland County, recognize and have, and the SMART area particularly has supported transit in very large numbers in past elections. This will move to a conversation of how do we make transit better for everybody. Should this fail, the money, roughly $30-some million on an annual basis that gets collected for SMART to help support some of that, not all of it, but support some of that, would be impacted. If not, if the voters did not approve this millage. That's money that's part of the operating system. Similarly, Macomb County has a millage on the ballot, also 0.95 mils. I think people recognized 4 years ago it narrowly passed. Also optimistic that the voters there recognize the importance of it. And this moves the conversation, local solutions of improving transit everywhere.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chairman, for coming here tonight. So I just want to make sure, this is essentially a tax cut and roll, correct? We pay more currently than we will under this new plan?
Correct.
Okay.
For a better service.
Perfect.
I think voters approved 1 mil, Headley's rolled that back a little bit. This is 0.95 mils. That's less than that, and so yes.
And then, when your commission had to put this on the ballot, was this along party lines? Did that vote happen? Or
I'm happy to say that, thank you for that question. I'm happy to say that this was approved at a bipartisan level. Working with, I want to give shout outs to Republican Supervisor of Highland Township who helped craft this proposal, as well as Democrats and Republicans voting to put this on the ballot. It passed, if I remember correctly, 13-7, something like that. I think one member was absent.
so it said bipartisan support from
Bipartisan
around the county.
support, yes.
Okay.
Nearly
thank you.
2/3 of the board.
Chairman Woodward, question for you. I presume that you've had conversations with a number of business leaders. Can you talk a little bit about the economic development that's anticipated or is supported or is preserved with this?
There are
this
3
plan?
more slides that specifically talk about that when we go to business groups that to make it shorter, I cut out. There are a few things. One of the largest impediments of getting workers to jobs, particularly for jobs that pay on the lower end of the scale, is transportation. It's one of the biggest costs in a household, and access points. And so if transit's not readily available in an area, it's certainly hard to get people there. And so it's one of the reasons why the evolution or development and further investment in microtransit has been developing, is to help address that needs. Also, study after study shows that for every dollar we invest in public transit, provides a $4 residual economic benefit to the corresponding area. In addition to that, I mentioned the infrastructure bill that for every dollar that we put up in there, a $4 match comes down. That is part of the general formula. It's usually, you put up 20% and then there's a 80% match from these federal and state funds that come as a result of the passage of those new dollars to support the improvement of public transportation. Those are all the things that are absolutely necessary, and I think, I like to underscore the importance of this, that whether you yourself ever need to use public transit, rely on public transit, the chances that someone who brings your meal to your table at a restaurant did rely on transit to get there. People who care for our loved ones in nursing homes, in the hospital. I did an event at Beaumont, Corwell last week with workers there that rely on transit, workers who've been worked at Beaumont for many, many years, that rely on transit to get to work, and so to care for our patients, to clean the rooms, and do a lot of the work that, again, in the lower paid level. So the economic system doesn't work unless we can get workers from point A to point B, and it's critically important, and that's why you see business leaders strongly supporting this proposal.
I think also just maybe one more thought, and tell me if my instincts are wrong on this, but when in the beginning of your presentation, you sort of took a snapshot there of, sort of this, in terms of human beings, the sort of transportation desert, meaning, 500,000 people don't have access, 62,000 seniors. That's a snapshot of today. Mm-hmm. We've been preaching up here much to the leadership of Commissioner Douglas in our senior task force, and even going back to the economic summits that Mr. Patterson used to hold. We have an aging population in Oakland County, and we have huge gaps between the people, like you were mentioning, to serve the aging population. When I see those numbers, I look at those today, but then I would suspect that, at least from a senior point of view, those numbers are going to grow exponentially in the next 20 years, 10 years, and then the people needed to help them in those jobs that you mentioned from a medical field or whatever are also going to grow, and so those numbers are staggering to me today, but am I wrong to assume that they could get worse?
Well, in terms of the demand for these services, they absolutely are going, the demand's going to be greater, and that's what you've seen, particularly in these smaller agencies, which, again, I want to applaud what they've been able to do in some cases on shoestring budgets. If you ask anyone, operators, they are at capacity. They do everything they possibly can. They know the needs out there because they have to turn down rides every single day to get people where they need to go. You are absolutely right, and I think Commissioner Douglas can probably, more accurately, but the forecast in the next 20 years is that our state's population in Oakland County, raising at a click, in some cases, in some areas at a faster rate, is going to surpass the senior population than that of the state of Florida. And what that means in terms of delivery of service and getting people where they need to go, getting people to dialysis, physical therapy, to the hospital on a regular basis. On a personal level, I have a family member who found herself in a situation unable to drive. If it wasn't for public transit, she wouldn't have been able to get to the doctor's office regularly. And I think it's important to realize that this is about maintaining the freedom and independence for people to live independently. Transit is one of those things that helps make that possible. We have the technology, we have the ability to be able to do that, and we can do better than what we're doing now. And that's why this proposal, the fact that we can put forth a proposal in a bipartisan way at a lower rate and improve service. I think that's it's a winning formula, and the voters, I encourage, again, go to oakgov.com/Oakland Transit to get more information and make an informed decision.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Well, thank you for making time for us tonight, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. All right, this brings us to item 6 on tonight's agenda, which is a proclamation for the Daughters of the American Revolution, Ezra Packard Chapter 95th Anniversary. We have the proclamations here, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Douglas to actually present these because of her history and membership in the DAR. I think it's appropriate that she read this proclamation, and so we're going to come on down and right here by this.
Oh, yes, I need this.
I can hold on to things.
Okay.
I'm forgetful.
Good evening, everyone. The mayor has honored me by letting me present this proclamation. I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, an organization that is open to females whose ancestors participated in the American Revolution. If you're out there and the family lore is that you've got family members going back to 1776, we want to talk to you. Joining me today is the head of our chapter, Heather Curtis, and also one of our officers, Kim Martin. Whereas November 15th, 2022 is the 95th anniversary of the founding and organization of the Ezra Parker chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, NSDAR, that honors the memory and spirit of the men and women who achieved American independence and promotes education, historic preservation, patriotism, and Americanism. And whereas the Ezra Parker chapter was founded November 1927, led by organizing Regent Helen Farley Smith, with a charter membership of 36 dedicated philanthropic women to complete the important service work on the local level. And whereas 119 Ezra Parker chapter members continue this tradition with the more than 1 million women who have served in this vibrant service organization's mission to date, promoting education, historic preservation, patriotism, and Americanism. And whereas Ezra Parker chapter and SDAR daughters volunteer over 3,000 hours of service to America in the Royal Oak and surrounding communities each year to local veterans, students, and women. And whereas Ezra Parker chapter members are celebrating their founding, it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this vital organization and its memorable anniversary. Now therefore be it resolved, Mayor Fournier and I and the members of the Royal Oak City Commission hereby proclaim November 15th, 2022 as Ezra Parker Chapter National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution Day in the city of Royal Oak in recognition of this vital organization and to celebrate and honor their 95 years of service to America and the city of Royal Oak. Congratulations. And here is your official proclamation. Did you want to say a couple words?
No. I think you said it very well. Thank you.
Can we get Kim? Can you come up? Can somebody take a picture of us together?
Judy's probably better if I do it. It's
yeah.
got my film included as well. I love the best.
Do you want to get it?
Yes, of course. And
Not that one.
Great.
thanks,
Thank
Jake.
you so much. Thank you.
Duplicates?
Yes.
Oh, voila.
Thank you.
I couldn't understand him. He was coughing. Or maybe.
All right, wonderful organization doing wonderful work. So glad we have a commissioner, it's a member of the DAR up here. Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. All right, that brings us to public comment. A few comments on public comment before we start the public comment. The City Commission values and relies on the input of our fellow citizens to help make decisions. Now is the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related issue, both on the agenda or not. I ask that comments be directed to the City Commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please wait until recognized by me, Mayor Fournier, then come up to the podium. For the record, you'll state your name and address. Please be mindful that the City Commission wants to hear from everyone who wishes to speak tonight, so comments are limited to 3 minutes or less per speaker, not per topic. There's a timer at the podium to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, please don't hesitate at any time to email us, the City Commission, with your comments. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes, and we'll address those questions when the agenda topic is discussed. And if your topic isn't on the agenda, we refer it to the proper city department, and the city manager is also taking notes and follows up appropriately as needed. With that, who's first? Yes, sir.
Ron Niner, 324 Royal Avenue. I was here a month ago, and I mentioned the state of the main street north of 12 Mile. City has again put cold patch on the main street north of 12 Mile. It was good to see that workers were using a pickup to try to flatten the cold patch instead of the citizens with their cars doing it. However, I would invite the city council members to drive down Main Street and see what cold patch remains. I have happy to share cell phone pictures of the patch job. You have long cracks and you have somebody putting a shovel full of cold patch, maybe 3 to 6 feet apart, and the crack's still there. So you have long cracks, so you're going to fill it with water during the winter, and the road isn't going to, get any better from that. Then you've got the fact that you got all that cold patch on there, and all the bits and gravel end up on the edge of the road. Well, that's where you put the bike lanes. So if you're an avid cyclist, you will know that cycling on gravel isn't exactly a fun thing to do, and when it's cold patch, it's definitely not your friend. So, we want people to use our bike lanes. Okay, if you're going to cold patch, please go down the street with a sweeper afterwards and at least clean up the mess. Because you want the bikers in the bike lanes, not in the street. And they're going to, you see them driving down the street, they're cycling in the street. Why? Because the edge of the street is full of cold patch. Thank you. I drove down Northwood recently. I saw that you guys, under the underpass has been fixed and it's nice concrete there. But the road itself, heck, you could use it to test a lunar rover. It's horrible. And really, it's time you guys started paying to homeowners and not just paying attention to downtown. Because I really don't feel like you pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford, Royal Oak. At the May 9 Commission meeting, I requested the city to provide the merit-based criteria used for evaluating the proposed marijuana facility sites and the schedule of the facilities proposed for Royal Oak in the same format that Berkeley used. I appeared a second time and received nothing. So I finally resorted to submitting a FOIA in order to obtain the requested information. What I received are a highly redacted list of facility applications and application review notes. I do not understand why the referenced Michigan statutes did not prevent Berkeley from providing detailed information regarding the applicant's name, proposed location, scores, and rank, while Royal Oak alleges that they do. We want the same level of information that Berkeley provided. The city's review criteria is subjective. The review criteria for each proposed facility is annotated only with a yes, no, and/or comments. There is no objective point schedule like the Berkeley evaluation criteria. The absence of an objective point schedule invites an arbitrary and capricious selection of the approved facilities. Note that Gatsby is represented by a former Royal Oak City Commissioner / Mayor, and Royal Treatment is represented by a former City Commissioner, both of whom regularly represent clients before Royal Oak boards at City Commission. They are both political supporters, financial contributors, and represent financial contributors to the commissioners. Gatsby is located across the street from the Oakland Schools Technical Campus. The school representatives' objections were quietly silenced, and I suspect that came from the Oakland County Commission, i.e. Dave Woodward. There is definitely an appearance of favoritism here. The top 4 facilities represent one each of the permitted facility types. A grower A, the 4th selected facility not yet approved by the Commission, is also located adjacent to the Oakland Schools Technical Campus on their south border. All but one of the 31 facilities on the standby list are retailers. The marijuana ordinance lists the allowable number of each type of facility. There are only 2 additional slots available per the ordinance, one each for a grower, Class B, and a marijuana microbusiness. By the way, the ordinance doesn't define A, B, and C growers or differentiate between them. It's an error. The limitations on the number of facilities allowed are reminiscent of the liquor license moratorium in downtown, and we all remember how long that lasted. Thank you.
Mr. Harrison. Ms. Wagman. Saving money on utilities.
Yes, thanks. Janice Wagman. I'm here to talk about the millages on the November 8th ballot, the two Royal Oak millages. The city manager stated the whys of the millage proposals. In his letter to you, he said, final projections in the general fund into future years will make budget decisions increasingly difficult, and parks, cultural, and senior programs will likely be the first areas recommended for reduced funding or possible elimination. Why? I've got umpteen pieces of campaign literature here, one of which has got several of your pictures on it, which I just lost, sorry, that say that you're working every day to keep Royal Oak a wonderful place to live. You're maintaining exceptional public safety and city services on a balanced budget. You're investing in community treasures like the library, which we just passed a millage for, animal shelter, farmers market, and parks. And you're meeting the needs of older residents by investing in senior services. So how do you plan on doing that when you are threatening to cut or possibly eliminate funding unless we want to raise our taxes? Further, if you value parks and seniors, why didn't you include them in the prioritized list for the use of our $28 million in ARPA funds instead of threatening to cut or possibly eliminate their funding? To the taxpayers regarding the parks millage, from the tax increase, only 23 cents of every dollar maximum will go towards improvements. What improvements? We don't know, because you haven't given us a plan. To the taxpayers regarding the senior millage, in lieu of current funding, according to the city manager, in other words, it won't provide any more service than it does now, despite what was hinted at in the city manager's letter and the Everyone Wins postcard. And what happened to the fair share of senior funding that was part of the safety millage? As a renewal, the budget should have reflected the same safety millage policy that has been in effect since 2013. A part of the safety millage is supposed to go to senior funding. Finally, it's disingenuous for both the city manager and the YES committee, of which Commissioner Perucha's husband is the treasurer, to cite a decrease in certain taxes without citing the new 10-year library millage with a Headley override, or the future roads millage renewal with a Headley override will be on the ballot next year, the stormwater utility fee, which is still on the agenda and will most assuredly drastically increase water bills of many seniors, and the future 5% increase in our taxable values used to calculate what we'll actually pay in taxes. I urge the residents to vote no on these millages. Although you may be able to afford an increase beginning 22 days after Election Day, many of your fellow residents will not. And I got to use my $1,200 tone alert. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagman. Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm Chris Meister, and I live at 1066 Vincetta Boulevard. And this evening, this City Commission will be voting on a resolution regarding the transit tax that Mr. Woodward just spoke of. And he spoke eloquently about the wonderfulness of the countywide transit system, and that cost is going to be forced on everyone in the county, and including some rural county parts of the county, which are barely scraping by, and this is going to be forcing people to sell their homes. It was presented that this will represent a decrease in taxes for the people of Royal Oak. Yes, it will be a 0.05 decrease for 1 year, and then after that it's going to go up a 5%, and then the year after that again another 5%. And it's the problem with this proposal is that the only thing that's solid about it is the price tag, $66 million for the first year, and then it'll increase for 10 years, every year for 10 years after that. And it's going to be a tremendous burden on the people of the county. And the truth of the matter is, the system now is a failure. You know, based on ridership, ridership covers basically 2% of the cost of operating it, and now we're talking about increasing it. And Mr. Woodward showed the maps with a lot of gray areas and gave the impression that these places were without service. That's not true. These are townships that had their own solutions to their transportation problems. And I was there when the county commissioners voted to put this on the ballot, and it was a far different slide presentation than you saw tonight because it changes every time. And at that meeting, there were township supervisors who were complaining about how they had absolutely no input on the decision-making process. It was just forced on them. Now it's presented as if there's discussion all along, you know, and there's also talk about it, all the money being dropped in if this doesn't pass. Reality is the funding will carry it through June of next year. There's plenty of time to work out a more rational, workable plan that works for the whole county. And but right now we have no plan that you're being asked to vote on. You're just being asked to support a millage increase. You're being asked to support the price tag. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Barb Yeagley. I'm actually a resident of Troy, and thank you for your hospitality here. And I wasn't going to speak, but I had to speak to Ms. Parush's invocation, which was one of the more unusual ones that I've ever heard. I don't think you should be so harsh on people that are striving to have photo ID to vote, like you do to buy alcohol or cigarettes, or to be critical of people for participating in our democracy and then asking for an investigation and to prove that the elections were run without corruption, or complaining about people who object to having billionaires fund our elections instead of. I know, and I have a lot of respect for the city clerks. I know that they are very hardworking. Ours is hardworking in Troy, and I'm sure that the one in Royal Oak is. And I don't recall anybody ever attacking city clerks, certainly not in Royal Oak or in Troy. So I think you owe an apology to the people who are being sincere in their efforts to ensure election integrity and so that we can all participate in our democracy, and that you have one vote per citizen who's interested in voting and not have opportunities for having your vote being cast by other people. You also have a right to not vote if you so choose. So again, thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you, Ms. Yeager. All right, anybody else wish to speak tonight at public comment? Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to bring the meeting back to this side of the table, which brings us to item 8, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda? Mr. Macy?
E.
E. Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Prush?
G.
J.
G.
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 Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner Douglas?
Move approval of the remaining consent agenda?
We have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion on the motion? All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to item E, formerly on the consent agenda. Commissioner Macy.
You didn't read me my consent agenda.
I know, because a motion was made quicker than I could read it. I know what she's up to.
Okay, so this is for the trash receptacle bin replacements in our city parks. I'm very interested in the replacement of the big blue bins that we've had for a long time. The price tag associated with this was a little bit of a sticker shock, and so I'd like to hear some more from DPS on these very expensive bins.
Thank you, Commissioner Macy. Good morning, rest of the commission. So staff was tasked to look at alternatives for the metal blue trash bins in our parks currently, and we, took a lot of time and looked at different receptacle options to replace them, and we look at some criteria with our trash cans in our parks, and that's the durability, obviously how aesthetically appealing they are, given that they are just trash cans, the serviceability of these trash cans, and some other areas as far as what kind of integration is involved with them, and if there's any other benefits associated with these trash cans. So the trash cans presented as a recommendation by the staff. The durability, they are made of a ABA plastic, which is a impact-resistant, recyclable material plastic that helps these cans withstand the durability of regular park use. They have a solid steel frame, and they are also reinforced with a self-lubricating hinge. And also the cylindrical design kind of offsets any sort of corrosion, especially when you have a square type design. A lot of times those welds can wear over time. So the durability of the trash cans presented, in our opinions, are very sturdy. Aesthetically, they're aesthetically appealing. They have an attractive and minimalistic style design. It's going to be like a composite cherry wood. And I have a sample over there if you guys would like to look at it. Serviceability, which is a big thing, so we don't interfere or interrupt our regular serviceability. These come with a side door versus a top load, so it's cleaner. You can unhinge the door, pull the can out. We have a kind of like, I call it like a dolly system, where we can just load the trash barrel in, we can dump it into our trash trucks. And it doesn't require any sort of lifting of heavy liner through the top. This also will allow us to put these cans deeper into the parks, rather than putting them out on the streets, and then our DPS staff can also get into the cans into the parks a lot easier as well. These particular cans have a futuristic technology integration in them. In this recognition of creating a connected city, these cans are capable of having some technology added to them. For instance, the fill level, temperature, GPS location, air quality, foot traffic, and noise pollution. Now, we don't believe we're in the position right now and to implement these at this moment, but this does allow us down the road to implement this type of technology in our parks to better understand the use of our parks and the trash, for instance, foot traffic and the type of noise pollution that we get. And then one of the other benefits that these cans provide is an optional half moon liner, where we can designate one to be a trash and one to be a recycle.
So that does lead to my next question. So I guess back to the original question is, so you've done a nice job of summarizing the cans that you chose, but so we received 3 quotes that I see, and the ones we picked are twice as much as the cheapest ones. And I was trying to compare as you were saying this, and it looked like the things that you're talking about for the most expensive one, about what they're made of and the fact that there's a side door, it looks to be pretty similar. So I get the George Jetson-ness of these trash cans, except it doesn't sound like we even are going to have those enabled. So I'm really looking for like a comparative, like why are these twice as good as these other ones? These are trash cans. And then my next question is, if we're going to be spending a lot of money to put things in the parks, why don't we have recycle bins to put there too? And so personally, I don't love the idea. I mean, I can see how it would save space, I guess, to have this be split into half with recycle and trash, but every time I see a can like that, it's like the recycle half is filled with trash. Mm-hmm. So I would almost prefer to have a separate receptacle for that anyway. So I get the benefits of this, but I'm still comparatively not understanding it, and so if you could help me understand that, and also if Mr. Flipsky could tell me where those recycle bins are, I'd be curious to hear that.
Sure. So overall, I mean, the big difference between all these, and when looking at different trash cans, we like to find similar. So, the side doors, where you can pull the liner out for our DPS staff, side deposits. So they all kind of have some sort of similarities in that retrospect. But the big component is the durability and the serviceability of these, and we feel with the domed cylindrical type shape, we don't have to worry about any of the welding breaking or falling apart over time. It's a lot easier to pull a round liner out, because we just go right with our dolly and then into our service trucks. So.
Okay, Mr. Flipsky?
Yes, if I could add, durability was the biggest part of this, and in retrospect, there were some cans that were actually, believe it or not, more expensive than this, and arguably that would have been a better thing to include in the analysis here for you to see. But durability is a big issue. We have not invested in any kind of meaningful way in these sorts of products for our parks. We've had the nasty blue barrels for some time. I don't think that we'll always have the opportunity to spend on this. So it's not a spending for the sake of spending and buying the most expensive product. We spent a lot of time reviewing durability in terms of how we service them. I mean, depending on how these are deployed and how they're used really can play into that. I think if the way ours are, durability is a huge issue, and this is a big investment. What we did not want was to have a cheaper quality can that we were continuously replacing or having problems with. We got pretty in-depth into looking at the hinges and things on these doors in consideration of things like durability and longevity, and we're convinced that these have that, along with, in our view, one of the nicest looking cans that we've looked at. Quite the improvement from the blue ones.
It is very aesthetically pleasing, but at twice the cost, you could replace every single can in every single park one time and still have spent the same amount as you would this additional time. So the durability, durability to me seems like a really big factor when the prices are maybe a third different, but when it's twice as much, it's just a harder question. So you didn't answer me about the recycle bins.
I am about to.
And I also want to hear, if we're picking these bins that are twice as much as the lowest ones, why we're getting 20 more than we currently have in our parks at the cost of $40,000.
So we do feel that there are additional places that they can be deployed, so we would have that ability, in addition to having a few on hand in the case that, let's say, something gets graffitied. Well, we can fix that, we can clean it, but we can swap it out really quick and then spend some time at our shop maintaining that. So between the additional locations and having a few on hand to be able to respond to that sort of thing, that's something that we considered. As far as the recycling, I think it's important that we keep those separately. You made the comment that somehow if it's in a combined bin, it's going to commingle trash. Unfortunately, even on individual recycle bins, almost every single time that they are emptied, they are commingled to a degree that it can't be sorted and separated and recycled easily. It's a big problem that not only we face, but other cities face. So rather than saying, let's add additional cost for additional separate bins in this, and also looking at how we can do it in such a way that the recycling is actually effective as we want it to be, we didn't include it in this project. That said, having the ability to, I think there's a lot of locations where that might be possible, that we can put these half-moon liners in there and have one side recycling and one side not, and it would provide us that ability to do that. We need to get creative with recycling in parks. For example, at Whittier Park, we found that it did work. There's a lot of bottled waste generated from the pickleball players, and we were able there to make an arrangement with the neighbors to say, we can give you a recycle cart there. One of the neighbors has to roll it out to the curb, and the waste haulers can pick it up. I think some combination of that we can work on. But recycling definitely poses a bigger challenge than trash, and so that's why it's not included in this particular project specifically.
Okay, just respond back quickly and then. Okay, thank you for that. And I guess I feel like we've been talking about putting recycle bins in the park for a long time. I understand what you're saying, that from a practical standpoint, like, oh, it ends up being 20% trash and we have to throw it out anyway, so it's no good. But in terms of our community and allowing people to do that recycling and to form that habit, when I'm at the parks with my kids, if they have something recycled, they know that they're supposed to put it in the recycling and not in the trash can, and yet there's nothing there for them to put it in. So forming those habits and creating that culture of doing it the right way, we can't do it unless we have that opportunity. And so it feels like that's something we need to work on. And I thought we had talked about we have enough additional recycle bins that are like that, just the standard residential ones, that we could throw them in some of our parks. I just would like to see us move on that sooner rather than later. That's just, I mean, if we're looking at our SCAP and what we're trying to do as a city, that's an important part of the plan. So I'm pretty skeptical about these cans, but I will pass on to other people to see if anyone else has questions.
Any other questions? Commissioner Dubut? Yeah, I appreciate the thoughtful consideration of the different products we've looked at here. I'm understanding that the one we've chosen has some more durability and serviceability, but I'm still not hearing that it's in the magnitude of twice as much. I'm just wondering, like, can we give some color to that? Like, explain to me why it's twice as good. I get, like, it might be slightly better, but is it $1,000 a unit better?
Well, that cost, I guess, what I was getting at earlier, and maybe we should have included a larger spread of what the possibilities are, because the sky's the limit, actually, with cans, and that isn't the most expensive can we can have. And so, to be illustrative, we included that one in there as well to show our lower end can that we considered these options. More than just durability, though, as well, what we mentioned, and I'm not always caught up in the new tech, newfangled stuff. I do see that there could be a really good benefit to the community to have that ability. So one thing that drives the cost of these cans up is that ability to add that additional module and do servicing and have that service provided with it.
So those modules, the smart tech, is that proprietary to this brand? They're customized for this brand, or is that an aftermarket piece that we buy from another brand and apply to our cans that could not be applied to these other models? I guess I was not clear on that.
Correct. It's the brand technology.
It's their brand. Okay. And are there aftermarket, like, third brands that we could buy and apply to the less expensive cans?
I don't know the answer to that one.
No, that's not really a thing that's out there.
I'm not aware of.
Okay.
Of that technology.
Me either. I'm just asking. Okay. And as far as the serviceability, you're saying it's going to be easier for us with the round one?
Correct, yeah. Because it would mimic our round metal ones that we have, in a sense, with a round liner. So essentially, it'd almost replicate our existing service.
So do we have a kind of a time estimate on that? Like how long would it take to turn all the cans in the city? With how much time is it saving? Because then we can put a value on that and better understand the increased value of these cans.
I don't want to give you exactly a time how much it would save. Suffice it to say, it would save a considerable amount. Among other things, right now with the metal cans, those have to be serviced with a large refuse truck. Hardly efficient, definitely two people involved in that, just driving around for that sole task. In the summer, for example, when we have the trash filling up quicker in the parks, rather than having a dedicated route with a trash truck, Now, being that these are bagged as well, and there's a cost to the bags, but relative to the cost of other things, it's nothing that we're going to see that's going to damage our budget. But these parks crews will be able to have that. So now if we have our seasonal help, even they're in a pickup truck with a trailer, and they're doing their cut, what used to be two separate tasks, cutting and then trash, can now be combined into one. Because when you're at a park, you might have 2 bags of trash, take them out, tie them out, throw them in the bed of the pickup truck, and dump them at DPS when you get there.
And that's a capability that we would not have with the
Correct.
less expensive model.
And that's why the cans right now have to be, they're unsightly and they have to be at the edge of the road, because in order to lift the big metal barrels, you need the arm. So they have to be somewhat close, otherwise you're trudging it through the park. And as you know, sometimes throughout the year, it's not easy to traverse the park on foot, let alone dragging a can behind you.
Okay.
So this does improve how we're going to service them. Being that they have lids, that they're not next to the roadside, we have a problem now where if somebody's got a bunch of cut up 2x4s in their truck and a bunch of other drunk, they drive by and they see a barrel next to the road, they fill them up, and we get complaints that there's stuff overflowing out of the cans and people are putting construction waste in them. A lot like Leslie to do that if it's in the center of a park somewhere where you can't just drive up and dump. I got through a few things out there, but these are some of the other benefits to this. That still doesn't answer your question specifically about the cost of the can. Suffice it to say that, and this isn't always the best reason to say that, but it's not the most expensive can. Believe it or not, I about fell out of my chair when I saw what some cans could cost, and they didn't even deserve a closer look.
Right.
Because of that.
Okay.
So I'm with you on that. And we'd be happy to go back and bring back other cheaper options if that made everyone more comfortable. I'm convinced of the quality of these and the value that we will get out of them, but certainly we'll follow your
I'm a supporter of value. I'm not just looking for bottom dollar. I just want to understand the value we're getting out of the more expensive product. And the staff time, as you're explaining it, that's helpful detail for me. And if we're saving 20 staff hours a week, I mean, this pays for itself in a couple of years, right? So that's helpful. Thank you.
We'll go Commissioner Douglas and Commissioner Caldwell.
I'm looking at Mr. Fidelli and Mr. Filipski over here and kind of mentally adding up the years of experience they have in their respective roles. Not to mention probably the rest of the staff people that they may have consulted in making this decision. They've clearly given it a lot of thought, and I as the city commissioner know only what they've told me about this, and am not disinclined to reject their recommendation because I respect their professional judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple follow-ups on what Commissioner DeBuck said. Starting with the technology behind it. So, I love technology. I do love adding every bit of technology that we can. The newest thing, let's buy it today. But how much do those modules cost? If we were buying a bin because we could add this technology, we should have an idea of how much that technology added might be if we do want to add it in a future year. So do we have an idea of what this might be to deploy that?
Well, I would defer to John on that one, the cost, if he knows it. But as I understand it to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, it's like per location, so it would be not like actually buying the modules, but paying for a subscription.
Yeah.
That is correct. It's a subscription-based technology, so you can get, for instance, if we had 2 trash cans in a park, you could fit one with the technology and then pay for that one bin in a monthly subscription. I did not get the cost of it because I don't think we're quite there yet to implement this technology in the parks. It adds a nice feature to the trash cans to understand the foot traffic and the type of activity that we see in the parks. I mean, I see the activities in the parks, but to get an actual data figure could be very valuable in the future.
It sounds like buying a Tesla because it might have autopilot one day, but you don't quite know how much autopilot's going to cost you to turn it on, right? I do love that we're buying this for the additional technology. I think having a little insight into what that technology might cost would be helpful to know for long-term planning. And then a second question I have is, I live across from a park. I see actually the refuse truck come by, but then I see one guy jump out and haul the blue bin or the blue barrel into the garbage truck. So maybe, we have the Hulk servicing the south side of our Royal Oak, but it is done by one person right now. I don't understand how a cylinder shape, because it has a bag in it, is easier to service than a square shape, because a square shape also can have a bag in it that you just pull out and put into the garbage, into the pickup truck, right? So I guess I'm getting disconnected in the difference in shape and how that makes it easier to service.
John, so we have some equipment right now, like that dolly that he explained, that's made for a round barrel. And even though we could bag this and 9 times out of 10 carry the bag out, there would be occasions where either somehow it got filled with water or fluid or something where we got to actually take the whole barrel itself out and move it across the park to the truck. Then when we got to the truck, if it's way too overweight, we already have the equipment on our truck that can grab the barrel. They can't grab a square container, at least not without damaging it. So in that way, I think that's what John was alluding to, and meaning it's more in line with the way we service things now, so it's less disruptive in that way. In terms of a cylindrical container being more durable, at least in my experience, and this was the comment of others as well, when you have structures like that have more weld points than say a cylinder, and just in how it's manufactured, you have more points of failure, more little nooks, crannies for water and briny water to hang out, and it decreases the longevity of it. That's anecdotal, but I've seen it, and so it's a minor detail. Thought it was worth mentioning here today. It's not like we have to get a cylindrical one, but that is something that we considered.
Okay, and then I guess one last train of thought here is, do we deploy trash refuse containers during the wintertime, or are they kept in the yard in wintertime?
We'd have fewer of them in parks during the wintertime because of the lack of activity. These ones wouldn't be the case. We wouldn't take these wherever we set these. They would be year-round.
Okay. But it's possible that if we were maybe to delay a decision tonight, so we could maybe have a little bit more of a conversation about refuse and recycling, because I think, I agree with Commissioner Macy that having recycling in the parks is important. And there is a solution out there to try to keep some of the dirty recycling out of the system. But even for the visual, we go to the park, and my son does this all the time. He picks up a bottle, says, "Daddy, someone hurt the earth." Now, Royal Oak Schools is doing a great job shaming these kids into recycling. I appreciate it, but we then just have to throw it away. So having a spot to recycle it, I think, ingrains in people that this is, the way to help the planet, and it really lines up with our SCAP. I'd be willing to wait a little while to figure out if there's a solution that involves recycling and refuse in a purchase. So that's where I stand on this tonight for my fellow commissioners.
Anybody else? I had a couple follow-up questions. The funding for this comes out of the solid waste fund, correct?
That is correct.
So it's not like we're spending money that could go towards parks or go towards roads or anything like that. This is money that is in the solid waste fund generated by the solid waste mill to deploy trash and recycling management, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Of that, I see it's $100,000 more than, let's say, the next lowest cost option. In your professional opinion, you've said, hey, this is really going to work better in our system. It's going to allow us to be more efficient. And that efficiency, when I'm trying to do some math off the top of my head, these things have a lifetime of what, 10 years? Maybe 15?
15 is what I would guess.
15, so you got 100,000 divided by 15. That's, $6,000 divided by, 50 parks, $133. When you look at it in terms of, okay, are we getting $133 efficiency, for the fact that, it's one less headache you have to worry about when these trash cans get full. I mean, people always amaze me. Like, you pop on social media every now and then. I'm not on it, but when I do, it's like there's some strange things. People are like, oh, look at this trash can, it's overflowed. It's like, did you contact anyone from the city to let them know that it was over? I'm sure they'll come pick it up. You know, they can't solve a problem you can't figure out, you know, or you're not told about. So, you know, with this, we have a higher likelihood of having clean, you know, when the folks are out there cutting the grass, or if we need to send somebody out there real quick, we can't fire up the truck. They get all that garbage out of there, which is less rodents, less issues, all of that stuff. I agree with your recycling argument. In fact, in a way, it could be, I'd be interested, a hypothesis I have here is that if they see a bright big blue area and a black area on the same canister, they might be more likely to do things correctly versus like, oh, that's recycling, whatever, you know, throw their sandwich in there. So, I mean, it's $100,000. It's nothing to blink at, but, you know, I think just continuing back and forth, up and down, whatever, I think we gotta make a decision one way or the other so these guys can get to work. I lean, so my colleagues know, I think they're saying it increases efficiency if it's gonna save a few backs from being pulled, and it's gonna keep our trash barrels from overflowing because we can pick them up more often and they look better. And then there is I know we're focused on the technology, but that to me just seems like an upside potential, not the main driver of this. I'm willing to support it. Commissioner Douglas?
And I will move approval of the resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Prush. Discussion? Commissioner Colo?
So, you know, I guess one thing is, once again, getting back to this recycling issue. So I think we can find a solution. It's not going to be a solution we find tonight. So I guess I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution to direct the motion as presented, and add direct staff to present to us within 90 days an option for recycling in parks.
Amendment proposed by Commissioner Colo. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Just to be clear, the amendment is to, in addition to this motion that's on the table to move forward with the recommendation of staff, is to also direct them to come back with a recycling plan for parks within 90 days.
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, I'll call for a vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
No.
Okay, we got 2 noes. Motion passes. Okay, now the amended motion is basically the recommendation of staff with a plan to come back with a recycling plan for the parks. Okay, any discussion? All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. All right, so gentlemen, you got your trash cans, but now you got some homework. So be careful about recommending good ideas, I guess, because you have to come up with more. The way I received this is that the commission just wants more of this good feedback. We heard your plan for these trash bins. Now we want to hear this awesome plan for recyclables, part 2. All right, keep up the good work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Wow, we're still in the consent agenda. Jeez, hates people. All right, G, Downtown Development Authority and Commission for the Arts Downtown Holiday Winter Murals. Commissioner Prush.
Very quickly, not as long a discussion certainly as the last one. I just want to explain that when this issue was before the Commission for the Arts, which is where it went after the DDA, what the Commission for the Arts had to determine, and the only thing that the Commission for the Arts had to decide was, is this a mural? Because in the sign ordinance, the definition of a mural is very, very broad. It's essentially anything that you put on a wall of a building, including a window. And if it's not a mural, then it's a sign, and therefore it's not approved, because you can't put those kinds of signs on the walls of businesses. So the Commission for the Arts had to actually make a determination, yes, in fact, this was a mural, which we did. But what we also discussed was, because the definition of mural is so broad, it really limits people like businesses in the downtown or the DDA for doing some seasonal decoration, which is essentially what this is. These are temporary paintings on the windows that will be winter season murals, just like the flowers that are there during the summer season. And one of our fundamental questions is, why does this have to come to us? Why does it have to go through this convoluted approval process just to paint stuff on the windows? What if, elementary school students had a contest, mural contest? Does it have to go through this whole process? And based upon the way our ordinances are written, yeah, in fact it does. So what the Commission for the Arts decided to do was to hopefully work with legal staff and the DDA and people with the Commission for the Arts to kind of change the language a little bit so that it's more flexible, so that we can have temporary seasonal things on the windows without having to go through this convoluted process. So that's an explanation as to why it's even on the agenda, and what the Commission for the Arts is going to be doing in the future to hopefully make this process a little bit simpler so that it's more flexible and it's a little bit more nimble in terms of ideas to put cool things on windows. So that's all I wanted to say about this. So with that, I will make a motion to approve this.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion? Commissioner Colo.
I just think we should clarify also, this is paid for out of the TDA funds, not the city commission funds, correct?
That's right.
That's correct. Commissioner Perush told me I'm good.
Any other discussion? No, just thank you for explaining, Commissioner Perush. I mean, it's, to the common citizen, it's like, I don't understand. And, you make rules, you have to, you can't just apply them when you want to, you have to apply them all the time. And so, cutting down, I don't know if cutting down on red tape is the right way to put it, but in a way it kind of is, to make sure we can be festive and celebrate. So good work. The Arts Commission, Daniel, good work on your end, trying to figure this out as well. So, all right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right. I think we're out of the consent agenda 1 hour later, and we can move to our regular agenda items, which is a resolution in support of the transit millage as requested by Mayor Fournier with support from Commissioners Colo and Perush. And I guess I'll take the initial lead on this one. I had asked to put this on the agenda tonight, and I'm happy that my colleagues, at least 2 of them, agreed, and I'm sure perhaps more of you did as well, to put this item on the table. And I think for me, the reason behind it is that, certainly being in Southeast Oakland County, being in an area that is dependent on the density here and the current smart system, the fact that we now have Henry Ford Health System here, we have a traditional Beaumont being here, and we have a vibrant downtown that attracts visitors, workers, and we have an aging population, and we're trying to tackle some of the issues surrounding that. The importance of supporting this transit millage proposal is, in my opinion, paramount to the success of our city. So I thought it'd be important that our support is public if we do support it. We'll see where the vote goes, and that other communities can understand Royal Oak's position on it. I do see us as being a leader, an influencer, and I think it's appropriate for us to say where we stand on this particular topic. And I appreciate Chairman Woodward coming in tonight and explaining to the public, explaining to us maybe some of the things we didn't even know with the millage. I learned a few things as well that were very interesting and informative. So that's the reason why I asked to put this on the agenda. And so what I'll do is I'll hand it over to you guys if you want to have any discussion on it. Commissioner Dubak.
Thank you, Mayor. I think during the chairman's presentation, we got all the detail we need on this proposal and the many benefits it brings to our community, that it does come with a modest tax decrease for Royal Oak residents with a substantial increase in the quality of service, not just for our residents, but for the people that work in this city that need to access Royal Oak from other areas that might be opt-out communities. So the benefits go far beyond whether or not Royal Oak residents are riding the system every day. But the economic benefits, the benefits for seniors, people with disabilities, and other folks who can't afford the often burdensome cost of car ownership in our region, this is something that needs to be invested in. It's essential for, as you said, the future of our city, the county and the region as a whole. So I will move for approval of this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Goodbuck. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Colo, I think, or Commissioner Douglas? I can't.
Who's Colo?
Was it Colo? Were you first?
Fast.
Okay. Discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Douglas.
Well, yeah, we're, this month, the Aging in Place Task Force is vetting the results of all of our study work that we've done over the past few years. We have a draft plan out there. We've been reviewing it with, at some of our, at the senior facilities here in Royal Oak. We had an open house about it this past weekend. And unquestionably, one of the major considerations for people in response to this and the people who developed the plan is transportation for people as they age. We know that our current minibus system is not enough. It doesn't let people access what they have, what Royal Oak has to offer. It doesn't take you out in the evening to go out to dinner. There's clearly an intent in the transit plan that we're considering here today that would offset some of the problems that we're encountering and help us meet the goals of the Aging in Place plan. So I'm absolutely in favor of this.
Commissioner Colo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, just to piggyback off of what Commissioner Douglas said too, you know, if Royal Oak passes our senior millage also, I can't imagine how much of a great improvement we'll have to transportation services in Royal Oak between these two new funding sources. So I think this is a win-win for our community.
Anybody else? I think you guys bring up amazing points. I think the presentation tonight brought up some really good points. But I think for me, the bottom line is mobility is freedom. And to me, that is paramount. You can't put a cost on freedom. And so I'll full-heartedly be supporting this resolution here tonight. All right, no other questions. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. Thank you. All right, approval of license agreement, Tom's Ale Mary's and Mesa Winter Outdoor Seating. Is Markman or, oh, Mr. Hill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. So back in March, I came to you with a recommendation from the DDA for updated outdoor dining standards, which included limiting the outdoor dining season from April 1st to October 31st. In response to that, this body requested that we don't close the door on winter dining, but simply requests come to this body for consideration. So that's essentially what this item is. Tom's Ale Mary's and Mesa, owned by Ritz Hospitality, is requesting to put 4 igloos, as well as covered lights over the sidewalk. For the winter period, basically from November 1st to March 31st. This has been reviewed by the engineering division, the fire marshal, the building department, as well as planning, and all have basically said that there is no issue with electrical, building, or fire hazards.
Questions? Motions? Commissioner Colo.
Move approval.
A motion by Commissioner Colo, seconded by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? Commissioner Colo.
So when we thought about outdoor dining in the wintertime, I think in my head this is exactly what I pictured. This team does an amazing job with their patio, between the igloos, the lights. It really livens up our city, not only during COVID years, but just in the gray of winter. This is a really welcoming addition to our downtown. So thank you, Mr. Hill, for keeping the application process open, seeking them out, and thank you to this group for bringing this to us.
Excellent. Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you. All right, this brings us to item 11, which is discussion review of boards and commissions. All right, Ms. Barbie, now it's you. I was a little confused there at the beginning. 2 people near 1 chair. I was like,
I know. I have not figured out how to gracefully get in and out of this chair without falling yet. So here I'm going to stand. So good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. So quite a while ago, you guys had asked for a boards and commissions review to kind of look at a variety of different factors with all of our different boards and commissions. And I know it's been a while since we came up with that idea, and it is a part of our strategic plan. And as I'm getting ready to kind of move forward, because it's been a while, I just wanted to check in with you guys, make sure we're all on the same page, and that I'm providing the type and elements of review that you are looking for as a part of this process. So there's no resolution or ordinance or anything you need to do to vote on. This is purely a discussion. So as I kind of understood from you all before, the elements you were looking for was to review each individual board and commission, to look at how it fits in with our strategic plan, how it's budgeted for, whether or not it has a budget, how we're providing staff support, whether it's meeting the intent it was created for, if we're providing relevant support and advice to the city commission or the city manager as it's described in its particular ordinance, and how it's working with that particular department that it maybe is more aligned with. Some of our boards and commissions may not be exactly aligned with the department as I've found. So kind of looking at that element of it as well. The second part of the review piece that I understood from you all was to look at the processes that are supporting our boards and commissions and look for opportunities for improvement there. That could look like things like the application process, how we onboard them, providing any type of training that they might need, a standard appreciation. I heard there was some interest in kind of that approach as well. Kind of looking at some of the volunteer management elements of this, providing any staff training that's needed, and then archiving boards and commissions that no longer exist and kind of how we look at some of those things. The third element was potential consolidation or elimination if a board was not meeting some element or maybe not quite as needed anymore. So that's what I kind of understood from you all previously in the bits and pieces I've heard. And then in the memo, I listed out the boards and commissions that I was planning to review. So I just was curious if there were other boards you wanted me to look at, or if there were boards you did not want me to look at that are currently on that list. So that's kind of what I have for you, and just looking for some feedback before I start bringing items forward.
Commissioner Bruce?
Some of these boards are actually required by state law. For example, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Review. So it seems to me that there are some of these in this list that are kind of in a different category and that are not going to need or require the same amount of scrutiny as some of the others, because what they do and what they are and how they're composed of and how they operate is pretty much settled state law. So I'm assuming, given that fact, we can kind of prioritize these boards and commissions and put those kinds of boards perhaps in the bottom of the list. I mean, they might need a little bit of tweaking, but overall, you know, what the Zoning Board of Appeals does and what it's made up of, you've got to look at the state statute, and the Planning Commission is the same way. So I'm assuming that at least in your mind, there will be hopefully an ability to prioritize which boards we look at first and which other ones we can kind of put on the back burner because there's really not a whole lot we can do with them.
Yes, so my plan as we kind of move forward was to group like items or boards that all report to one department. So the police department has a couple of different boards that work with them, and maybe we do all the police ones together, and then handle some of the ones that are more state statute like planning and zoning more towards the end.
Okay, all right, thanks. That was my initial question.
Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate this coming to us tonight. You know, this has been a long conversation. And I'm excited to get to the next step also because it has been a long conversation. Yes. You know, we've been looking at this review for quite a while. You know, one thing that I'm looking for that I don't know if I quite see here, you know, we talked about the Civic Foundation tonight. We talked about a review of what are you doing, what do you have going on. And it'd be good to have some sort of quarterly update from these boards and committees, or some sort of update on some basis. I don't want to put time to it. A handful of board and committees by ordinance provide a yearly update. The library board, I think it says, the Commission for the Arts does, and others don't. So we have, I think, and it's the difference from when the ordinance that enacted some of them, depending on which attorney at the time wrote it, we have different requirements for what the reporting mechanisms are. So one thing I think is important in this is kind of standardizing all the boards so that we're kind of all on the same page with what's going on. Also will give us some more insight into what's going on. For instance, Commissioner Macy sits on the Parks and Rec board. I don't know if we all know what they have cooking for the next 6 months. Because that's, we all can't be on every board at all times. That's just not how city government works. So, that's one thing I look at. Another thing is just organization too. A lot of boards and committees don't have bylaws. If we had a standardized bylaw system, so we have a chair, a vice chair, secretary, so whatever works for the different committees, but I think that'd be beneficial to add. So, that'd be something I'd look for. I know you asked us if we should add or subtract from this list. I don't know every board and committee in the city. I would just assume we look at all of them to see if they're relevant still.
Okay.
It's a large list. I don't know. I don't think any of us knows all the boards and committees. So that I would just ask that we're looking at the ones we might not be thinking of.
Yes, we can start with this list as we go.
Yeah.
We might find some different elements as well.
And then finally, I see your first recommendation is coming in November.
Yes.
Also includes the way the application process happens. I was actually talking about the appointments committee today because we're going to meet sometime in the next month and a half. But the election's also coming up. So I know, picking up my absentee ballot today, the clerk's office is hustling and bustling, trying to, keep these votes safe and secure and make sure that people get their ballots. I'm not sure that we need to be that aggressive in that timeline, so if this pushes to the first or second meeting in December, I think that's acceptable also, because we want to make sure that we're giving the clerk's office the time they need to be an equal participant.
Yes, so my hope is to work with Ms. Hollis in a time that works for her. So the application process was actually not something I was planning to bring forward in November or December.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Douglas?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to emphasize and support what Commissioner Perush said, yes, there are boards here that are legally established and have their own independent function, but the onboarding and continuing education and recognition portion for those bodies is very important, and I think it's been lacking in the past, and I'd love to see us boost that up. Are we also looking for gaps in our board structure? That is, will you be looking for, or do we as commissioners identify out their roles or functions for advice from citizens, or actually decisions from citizens, that we would be looking to create any new bodies? And I'm not trying to make more work, but I mean, let's kind of look out there and see if there are functions where we do need additional support. Thoughts? Commissioner Macy's nodding her head.
My understanding when we put this in our strategic,
I yield to the commissioner from Vermont.
Wilson.
From
North
Indiana.
Vermont.
Oh, Wilson.
North Wilson.
I give
North Wilson, yeah.
So my understanding when we put this on the strategic plan was that was part of it as well. That was really it, is that we're looking at some of these boards and maybe some of them, their missions are no longer relevant to what we're doing right now, and we would be looking to fill the gaps of things that we might need right now. As at strategic planning, I've said many times, and talked to you about this, like some kind of citizen engagement or volunteer coordinator, volunteer corps that could be created. And one of the places that we looked at that would be the what's it called? The Crime Prevention Council, which doesn't focus a ton at this moment, as far as I can tell, on crime prevention. But I think like kind of reimagining what that crime prevention work was is, I think, part of what we asked for when we were looking at this review.
Did you have any Commissioner DeBook? Thank you. I appreciate getting going on this conversation. Two things that I would like to see is additional consideration. One, HRC is not listed here amongst this list. I don't know if that's by design or just because it's not up and running yet.
A little bit of both.
Okay.
that one might be one that we put at the end, just so we give it some time to kind of find its footing a little bit and then check in with you all at that point. So that was kind of my thought on that.
I was just thinking, as you're looking at, are there responsibilities or things to be absorbed by other commissions? I think we've pretty well defined the HRC, but still something that could be, could be up for consideration. Also curious to know how much staff time is going in to each committee, particularly the ones that aren't designated by state law, because that's something we must do. But how much staff time we're voluntarily putting into these, both in time spent physically at these meetings, but also preparing for the meetings and taking direction from those bodies to bring them things back to the meetings. So that, I think that would really help with the equation of the value that we're getting out of this. And that's why I'm a little reluctant to the idea of them all having a written report on any kind of regular basis if it's not necessary, especially committees that have commission liaisons who are free at any given time to come and report out on the business of their committees. I would not want to put on staff generating another report just to have another report for the sake of it when we are present at these meetings as a body through our representatives. So I think the staff time would be an interesting consideration. And lastly, when thinking about eliminating or consolidating committees, I do just want to be sensitive to the fact that this is a place where residents can engage with government and have a say in government. And so I want to be efficient, but not indifferent to that fact that the fewer committees, the fewer these bodies we have, the fewer opportunities there are to serve. And we see from appointments, we have a slew of residents who want to serve. We're still waiting for an appointment. So I want to be sensitive to that too. So mixing efficiency with that value these bring.
Yes.
Thanks. Real quick, just I know they're not on here because they've served their life, but it'd be interesting also to consider. We typically at any given time have temporary committees. So when we start talking about staff time, we talk about this. It might be good to do some sort of analysis on that, not overthink it, but throughout the years we've had the downtown task force or the park committees and all of that. And just because those are opportunities for people to participate, sometimes the engagement committees that we have where we get people involved are really effective and really important, but they just have a shorter life. They don't endure, and I think that's worth understanding in the bigger context of boards and committees, knowing that what has worked well with them, when is it appropriate. I think sometimes the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of city councils and commissions across the land are like, oh, we got a problem, let's create a committee, and it's like, okay. But I think here in our case, often we are thoughtful and said, hey, we can't do the heavy lifting. We really need is broad and deep participation, like for our downtown park, which Commissioner Perush led up and did an amazing job. But all of the work and all of the opinions and all of the information being put into a recommendation to us was just, I think, world class. And so same thing with Normandy Oaks, two that come off the top of my head. So think about that. I don't know what I'm asking you for. I'm just asking you to consider the impact of those and how we should look at those.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cole.
Just quickly to Commissioner DeBuck's point about the report. I'm not suggesting we have a annual report every quarter. Maybe more of here's what we have coming up and here's what we're working on. Just we all get a lot of residents' emails, so just we have an idea of some of the different items that are being worked on in this community. So I'd maybe find a way to summarize it, a paragraph, something that's small, just to give us an idea of what our volunteers are working on, so we can recognize their work and be able to communicate it to our constituents at any given time. And then Commissioner Macy was talking about the Crime Prevention Council. I think one thing that might be beneficial here is a statement of purpose for each board and committee. Something as basic as that, so we know exactly what their goals are. I think that that quick statement could go a long way.
Commissioner Perush.
Another thing that occurred to me is that there are committees too that don't regularly meet, and sometimes because of that, they're not full of members at any given time. They just kind of spring to life when we need them, like the naming committee. Mm-hmm. If all of a sudden we have a new park and we want to name it, it's like, oh my gosh, who's on the naming committee now? And we try to figure it out and make sure that committee meets. And then as soon as the name is picked and we approve it, then they disappear again. So I don't know if that's a unique situation with the naming committee. I can't think of any other ones that fit that role, but it might be that some of these that that meet on a regular basis, and I think perhaps about the Charter Review Committee that maybe doesn't need to meet monthly all the time, but maybe only springs to life when we're actually considering in any given year some potential charter amendments that we've discussed that we think are appropriate. But if there's nothing really going on, perhaps it doesn't need to meet monthly, which is my view. So perhaps we need to consider some of these committees in those terms as well. So I'll just kind of throw that out there.
That's a really good point. Instead of, elimination, maybe it's frequency. Yep. Okay. Anybody else? I just think in general too, what's our onboarding process for our volunteers? I think if people are willing to put in the time, is there a handbook? I don't know, do we do that right now? I feel ignorant whether or not we give them something that says, hey, welcome, here's, your basic kind of guidelines.
You signed it, it has your face on it, Mike.
It's a picture of me.
So that's something we've been thinking about and working on, because as I've worked with my 2 boards and commissions, I found that they didn't know about the attendance policy, and so we had to do some conversation around that when it kind of came up, and what does that mean? And so having those tools can kind of help just set this stage with expectations a little bit, and so it's not quite such a shock. So those are things that we can cross, hopefully in the next few months.
Okay.
My hope is that maybe as you guys are making appointments, we're kind of moving ahead with some of that more onboarding element fairly quickly.
And with that recognition too point, I think it's, I'd like to thank board member. Anytime I appoint somebody, I talk to them and I thank them for their willingness to step up and serve their community. But if we have these Excel sheets or whatever with people's names and whatever, it might be nice to think about ways that we can give them official certificates after 1 year of service, recognize that they served. And then we have some people that have been on boards like the Historical Commission, like local experts that, we should probably do a little better job identifying and recognizing and celebrating, milestones of service. I think that would be really, I think something we should, I think we should be doing that.
I have a few ideas in my brain on that.
Awesome.
We're seeing a couple of cities that do some really cool stuff, so
great.
We're gonna get there.
Doesn't cost a lot, but it goes a long way, and it, we're grateful for these people. Let's show it a little bit better.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so my next steps, so my hope is as the process pieces will just come forward to you guys. My hope is to kind of break these down into agenda items of about 2 to 3 recommendations so I don't pile on in any given night. But what we would look at, I would also look at doing is meeting with the individual board at one of their regular meetings if they meet regularly prior to the recommendations coming out as part of the commission, so that way no one is caught off guard. I don't think that probably would feel very good for them as someone who's spending a lot of time with us. And that way they have a chance to maybe provide any feedback, weigh in, talk to you guys, come to the meeting and speak at public comment if that's what they want to do. So that will also be happening. That's my plan.
Perfect. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Macy.
Well, that just made me think, didn't a survey go out many months ago too?
It did, yes. So that was kind of one of the other elements that I've looked at is what do they think? Because I was really curious. I know between my 2 boards, I've noticed there's some things that they're unclear about. They didn't know, their expectations didn't match kind of where we were. And so I kind of asked some of the other boards. And so as we bring forward, those will shape some of the onboarding elements and the appreciation elements. But that also will come forward with each individual board to kind of say this is the feedback we heard from this board as to what that is. That makes sense.
And I'm sorry to throw you on the spot here, and I have no expectation that you know the answer, but I'm going to ask it on a whim. Do you know how many people we have roughly serving on our boards and committees?
43.
43? Oh, wow. That's very specific. Oh, wow.
That can't be.
43 boards, not
no,
members.
I meant 40. How many people?
Yeah, no, people, I'd have to.
I think at one point I looked and there's probably about 300-ish spots. By the time you that includes your spots and the staff ex officio spots, and by the time you kind of take out maybe some people who are serving on multiple boards, it kind of dwindles that number down a little bit, but it is a lot of seats.
That's pretty good participation, or at least, ability to participate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got some big groups.
Oh, that includes like task forces.
So, did we help with is our feedback
Yes.
pretty clear?
Yes. Yes. You guys hit on a lot of things that I was thinking, and it's good, I think, for us all, before I bring all of these, start bringing these forward, to just have everybody kind of hear from each other on this, and make sure we're all on the same page, and that way I don't come in and you guys are like, Susan, you totally missed the mark here. What were you thinking?
Works out for everybody involved.
Yes.
All right, good. Anybody else? All good? All right, thanks, Parkman, appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to the last agenda item tonight, which is the approval of the 2023 meeting schedule. Mr. Brady.
So, good evening, Mayor Fournier and City Commissioners. So, I present to you tonight 2023. Our meeting schedule is in the format same as it has been, with the exception focusing on March and December, where those meetings will be on the second and third Mondays of the month, but all the rest of the months are the second and fourth. So with March is taken into consideration the school break, spring break, and then of course the Christmas holiday, and we'll be doing the same thing this coming December as well. So this is presented for your consideration. If there's extenuating circumstances, we can reschedule a meeting. We do have the ability, through the mayor, can call an emergency meeting. Just setting the pattern in the meetings for the upcoming year is presented for your consideration.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, if there's one of these rare awkward circumstances where you have an ordinance, something, we need a second reading or something comes up, we can do those meetings with proper notice. But yeah, based on what I see here, we would literally be meeting on Christmas Day. Looks like that, yeah, because that would be a week out.
Correct.
Right. I don't know. I think I have plans, I'm not sure. Commissioner Colo?
With thanks to staff for saving my spring break plans, I move approval of the calendar.
We have a motion by Commissioner Colo. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. All right, discussion?
But just speaking for people who don't care when spring break is, I still support this motion.
Okay.
Four of us wouldn't be here, so.
I mean, I haven't made my plans yet. You could have saved me a lot of money on a trip if we had to meet, but I see Commissioner Macy is intrigued by something, but before I call the vote, anything to?
My screen background is a plethora of Commissioner Dubaks.
Oh, how lucky. Mine. You must get the lucky draw there.
Good thing you did that cybersecurity seminar.
Yeah, maybe it's a ransomware.
There's only one thing better than sitting next to him. Having a screensaver with all of his pictures. All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. All right. Notwithstanding anything for the betterment of our fine community, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Macy. We have a second, I think, by Commissioner Colo over there. All right, discussion on this critical motion. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Adjourned.